All right, here we are for the first ever NavCoin live stream. We've been doing these public education sessions for a while now internally with the NavCoin Core team, trying to get them up to speed on, some technical topics around Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto and all that kind of stuff. And we thought we'd take these live, basically. So we're doing it live. So this is uncut, raw, and unfiltered, and we're just going to kind of roll through this. It's not streaming.
It is a question.
All right, if you, as I said, we are doing this live, and it's our first one, so you're going to have to cut us some slack. Is it working for you guys?
Yeah, we've got it good.
Okay, cool. So the live stream started, and if you've got any questions, we're just go into the chat box and you can ask them there. I am going to kind of go through a whole bunch of stuff, so we'll probably save the questions for the end, to be honest. Probably about half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how long it takes, but try and kind of get through it and then field any of your questions at the end. So the two topics that we're going to talk about today are cold staking and also static block rewards. So these two things make us compliant with Proof of Stake version 3, as outlined by Blackcoin. NavCoin, once we implemented the NTP fix for the block difficulty, for the clock sync fix, we became compliant with Proof of Stake version 2. So we're already that, and we're trying to move forward into Proof of Stake version 3. So that entails these two things, and we're going to talk them through with you now. So the first thing we really are going to talk through is cold staking, but I just want to kind of start right back at just simply how transactions work, because it's really important to understand how your wallet works and how transactions work so that you can understand how cold staking works and why it's good. So I guess the first thing to understand is that your NavCoin wallet, or any wallet really, but we'll talk about NavCoin in this instance, your NavCoin wallet really operates like a money box or a piggy bank, as we call it. Your wallet doesn't necessarily have a specific balance as such. What it does is it adds up all of the transactions which are sent to you. So it's kind of like putting money inside a money box. Inside my wallet, I might have 100 NAV and 50 NAV, which get sent to me, and even more smaller denominations, right? Like 1 NAV, 0.5 NAV, etc. All of these would go into my wallet as individual transactions, and this would give me a balance of 151.5 NAV, right? So 151.5 NAV. This is what displays in my wallet, but this balance is actually calculated from all these individual transactions, which come into my wallet from people sending me NAV. These sit in your wallet as individual transactions, and when I want to spend NavCoin, I have to actually spend one of these transactions which is sitting in my wallet. So if I go to a store and I want to buy something which costs 75 NAV, for example, my wallet will automatically try and calculate which is the best inputs to use for that transaction. In this case, it's going to choose this one. So it's going to use this as an input into a transaction. And if I want to send someone the 75 NAV, it works exactly the same as if I walked into a shop, right? If I walk into a shop and I want to buy a can of Coke for $1, I've got a $20 note. I give the shop owner $20. They give me $19 change in the can of Coke. This is exactly how this works. So we put in 100 NavCoin and we need to pay them 75. And from that 75, I get 25 change, which goes back into my wallet, right? So this is how a regular transaction in Nav works in pretty much any UTXO blockchain. And yeah, so understanding that is a good first step, understanding how change works and how these transactions work. When you make this change when you make this transaction, usually this change goes back to a separate address than where the coins originated from. It's also just important to understand the rules that are happening here, right? So we've got some money at A, and use another color. We need to send money to B, and this is a regular transaction. So the rules of this transaction allow me to send money from A to B, and if necessary, give myself some change, right? Back to A. So the other way that this can work, if I needed to pay someone, for example, exactly $51.50.
Sorry to interrupt there, Craig, but it looks like we've had two channels pop up. We've got half on one channel, half on the other, and the guys are coming across the stream now.
Okay.
So you might have to like, just give me a sec, I'll just try and get everyone where they should be.
There's two channels, what do you mean?
Yeah, like there's two, like we're on one, we're live streaming on one, but the one we were waiting on was another one.
Right.
Oh.
Did we create a new one?
That's all good. It's what we had, is how we're learning.
Yeah.
So everyone's moving.
Okay.
Hopefully. So we got 15 waiting in this one. And
Technical difficulties on the first live stream. That's okay.
We'll start again. We want to have to quickly abridge that whole situation because we've got 15 people on this channel coming across now. We've got 10 in the other one.
Can they not now? Can they just watch it afterwards, or they'll be kind of lost, right?
Yeah, they'll be lost.
Okay. Well, that's annoying, but that's okay. These things happen.
That's all good. Yeah. Okay.
When do we want to?
I'm just checking. I'll just make for this. Giving them 5 minutes. 11 people still waiting on this channel.
Okay.
And on this channel.
They're coming in.
Did you say? Yeah. Are you on the chat saying?
Anyone here? I'm waiting. Yeah, I'm on both. On Laura's laptop.
I'm on Discord.
But you told them on the YouTube chat to move over to the other channel. Yes. Yep. Look, I think we should just keep going. To be honest. Okay.
So maybe just quickly, like we've got 22 now, so we double think. Just quickly refresh through that.
Yeah. Okay. So quick refresh. What we're talking about is just generally how transactions work in your NavCoin wallet, so that we can understand how cold staking works and how staking transactions work. So basically, transactions sit in your wallet, much like putting money into a money box. They actually sit there as these individual amounts that have come in from people sending me NavCoin, and what your wallet will display is the total calculated from that. When I want to send someone some money, it works basically like how walking into a store works with fiat currency. So if I want to walk into a store and buy something for $5 and I only have a $20 note, I need to give that $20 note, I get the product, and I get $15 change or whatever. So in this sort of example, if I wanted to buy something worth 75 NavCoin, my wallet would select the 100 NavCoin, just like I need to select the bigger note that's in my wallet. And I would send the 75 NavCoin to the merchant for the product, and I'd get 25 NavCoin change, and then my balance would be recalculated from this amount here, right? Would be my new balance. So this is the basic scheme for a regular transaction, and it's really important to understand the mechanic of what's happening here. So the rules of the transaction are, I can send money from A to B, and if necessary, get change back to A. There is another way that transactions can work. If I needed to send exactly 51.50 NAV or something like that, I could actually group these transactions together and send them onto the person as well. So in that instance, these would get joined together into one and get sent to B as 51.50, and I would not get any change. There's no change coming back to me because it's exactly spent, right? So it's kind of two ways. I can either send more and get change, or I can use lots of little transactions and put them together, kind of like taking all the loose change out of your pocket and paying for the $5 that way, right? So it really does operate pretty much exactly like money in the real world. And that's how a regular transaction works. So the next thing we want to talk about is how a staking input works, right? So I'm going to get rid of most of this stuff here. So this is like the rules for a regular transaction, right? Spending for the spending transaction. A staking transaction's slightly different. So staking transaction's kind of different. So firstly, we'll just change the colors here because I've been told that red is not a good color. Even these pens are actually a bit too small, I think, is the large part of the problem. I'm just going to stick to black, I think. Okay. We're learning as we go. Right?
Yeah, that's better.
More visible? Awesome. Okay. So this is a regular spending transaction. A seems to B, maybe get some change depending on what's going on. When you create a block, you're allowed to do what's called a Coinbase transaction, which is slightly different because with this, there's rules that say I need to have the input to that has to be bigger than the output of B plus A. With this, when I create a block as a miner, I get to do this Coinbase transaction, which is how I earn my mining rewards, basically, right? And this has slightly different rules. Effectively, there is no B, it's A to A. And I get to generate a small amount as well and add that on. So this is more what a Coinbase transaction looks like. I actually, if I have 1,000 NAV and I'm using it for staking, I actually put that into the block as an input for a transaction, and I get to add a reward, which is calculated, plus any fees as well for the block, and then that gets sent back to the same address that I used as the input. So there's two different rules here. One is only ever from A to A, and there's only one address involved in these. If you tried to do a staking transaction from A to B, like it wouldn't work. It has to come back to the same address that it was sent from. Whereas this spending transaction, you can go from A to B, right? You can go from one address to another address. So there's two sort of different rule sets in operation here. Now, what happens when we try and create these transactions as well is we have to prove that we're the owner of these addresses, right? So I can't just look at the blockchain and find someone's 1,000 NAV transaction and try and use it as an input to my Coinbase transaction or my spending transaction. I actually have to cryptographically prove that I own those coins, that I can claim those rewards. So, you know, that's where your private and public key pairs come in. So, what do we want to talk about here? So, this is kind of like your public key gets hashed into your address. So, when you see a NavCoin address, it's apart from our awesome open alias addresses, it is the hash of of one of the public keys that's owned by your wallet. And these two are inherently linked together. So you can kind of think of a private public key pair sort of like a username and password combination, where the private keys like the password and public keys like your username. So effectively, when I create this transaction, it's all linked to a hash of an address because that's where the transaction has been sent. And then I need to provide the public key, which shows that that hash is owned by my public key. And then I also need to sign the transaction with the private key to show that I actually own the private key to that public key. And I have the password as such to sort of unlock this transaction. So this is actually what I would consider like a rudimentary kind of smart contract. You know, there is actually these sort of rules. There's some logic involved in this transaction. You have to provide a signature that is owned by the private key of the public key of the hashed address. You also have to have, in this instance, you have to have enough money to send the transaction, to get your change, and to pay whatever fee is necessary. So it has to be, the input has to be bigger or equal to the output. And there's a few other rules as well, but those are kind of the most important ones. So this private public key pair signing happens as well when we're doing the spending transaction, of course. It happens in both of these instances. So we've got the same deal here. And the hash or address. These are linked together, and this is derived from that. And yeah, same thing. We have to use the input to send to someone. I have to sign it with the private key to prove, and provide the public key to prove that that I actually own those coins. So we've got these two distinct actions here, and they have two sort of separate rules basically. And at the moment, they're governed by one private and public key pair, right? But this is where the cold staking comes in. So effectively, what we're saying is, with this code update, these two things get divided, and they become separate actions. So we'll call this A1 and A2. And we actually end up having two private keys, which are now associated with a transaction, right? And key A1 can only ever do this Coinbase transaction. So, or this staking transaction. We'll call it a staking transaction for simplicity, but it is the Coinbase DX. Yeah, so A1 can only ever do this. It can only ever send from A to A with the added extra reward added on. That's the only thing that it's allowed to do. And A2 is only allowed to do this. Sorry, actually A2 is the master password, I guess. It's like, it can actually do both of these two things. So this functionality remains the same. And the way it's set up at the moment, you have one key which can do both of these things. And this key will remain like that. So if you've got the power to spend it, you've got the power to stake it, basically, because spending is the more risky one of the two things in terms of protecting your funds. So key A2 can spend or stake, and key A1 can only ever do the staking transaction. So what this means is that we can generate these keys, and we can keep keep the spending transaction offline, or cold, hence the word, in cold storage. You could put it on a paper wallet. If we get an integration with Trezor or Ledger or something like that, you could keep it on one of those hardware wallets, and you can just keep that for spending. And then this is the key that you would actually have in your NavPi or on your desktop or wherever you're doing your staking, or your NavCoin Mate or your Odroid, or all of the awesome ways that you can stake these days. So this key would be on this device, and of course this device has to be connected to the internet, right? Should I even try and draw it like a globe? It's America, and Europe's over there, and New Zealand's over here somewhere. Yeah, awesome. So this is connected to the internet. I'm really not like that, whiteboard diagram type of video guy. So I'm not even actually going to try. But yeah, so this has to be connected to the internet, right, to do your staking. So one of the concerns is, well, if I've got my NavPi or I've got my mate set up, that it's online all the time, and potentially if you've got a bunch of NavCoin, you don't want to risk your funds. What if someone hacks that device and is able to get control of your funds? Then you're pretty much stuffed, right? They can spend all of your money, because at the moment there's only one key pair, and it can do spending as well as staking. So if they get access to your device, either physically or by hacking or something like that, and it is connected to the internet all the time, then they can take your coins. With this new setup, we've got these two. Only this one is ever online. This one you can keep much more securely offline on a paper wallet, or however, right? You can literally store it on a piece of paper. You could just write it down. If you had a really good memory, you could just remember it, but it's pretty long, so I wouldn't really recommend that. But this never needs to be on the internet at all, right? Except for when you want to spend your coins.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's stake either.
what's that?
I don't think it's stake.
Pretty sure it can, but we'll just double check that.
Yeah.
It may or may not be able to stake. Is that Alex? Okay. Correction from Alex. This one can't stake. This one can only spend. So we have actually completely separated the two out. So yes, that's awesome. Where are we going with this? You don't need to keep your spending key online. So it gives you a lot more security. Basically, is one of the main things that we're trying to achieve here with this solution. And okay, I think hopefully we got to the end of the cold staking pretty much, right? Everyone's happy with that. We talked about this. This is what we're trying to do. It means we can do offline stuff and all your funds are protected. If anyone's got any questions, feel free about cold staking. I'm just going to address that one since it's the only one that we managed to talk the whole way through. We'll park this static reward for another conversation. We'll try and split them up.
Better Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No wired connection.
Or just like an actual connection.
So yeah, if you've got any questions about the cold staking or how it works, I remember actually one thing we didn't talk about. How do you create your cold staking address? That's a question from Paul who wants to know how it actually functionally works. So let's talk about that. We're a bit all over the show, but we're just going to try and squeeze in this one topic before the bloody internet dies again.
Start posting packets.
Okay, so we talked about it before. We've got private key 1A and private key, A1 and private key A2. So we actually need these two separate keys, and what will happen is the wallet itself will be able to create this cold staking address, and effectively we get the pub key hash. Sorry, actually I'll draw it slightly differently. So as we said before, this is comprised of a private key, public key, same here, so what we do is we take the public key hash, which is the address of both of these, and they actually get combined. So the cold staking address will be 2 times the length of a normal NavCoin address. And that's pretty much what it is. There's a little bit more to it than that, but in essence, it's 2 NavCoin addresses, A1 and A2 concatenated together. And the wallet knows where one starts and one finishes, and it goes, this one is the spending, and this one is the staking. I think it's that way around, or it could be the other way around, but half of it is staking and half of it's spending anyway. And the wallet will have a function which can create this address, and then you're able to send coins to this address. So you'll actually have to create this new address, which is this double address, and then you've got your regular coins over here that you were staking with before. So you've got your 1,000 NAV or something like this. And once you've created this address, you'll actually create a transaction and send them to that new address, which comprises of A1 and A2, right? So you will, to participate in cold staking, you will actually need to generate a new address and then send your coins there. And then this will be able to perform all of those functions like we said before. So I guess the best practice is, would be to actually have 2 separate wallets, right? So you might have one on, you could do them both on the same computer, but you might have 2 separate computers, one that you kind of keep securely to generate A1, and then one that's online, which you generated your A2 address, and then you can combine both of these together into your staking address. But of course, anywhere where you've compromised A1 is potentially compromising your spending key. So that's what you want to keep secure. Hopefully when we get something like a ledger integration, we can just generate it directly on there, and we can create these addresses very simply. But all we need is that public key hash, and we can combine them together. So that's kind of how it would work. I guess the reason why you wouldn't want to do it all in one address, like if you just had one wallet and you generated two addresses, A1 and A2, if anyone compromises this wallet, they're able to derive both of those because we work on the BIP32 HD master key. So if someone gets this one wallet, they're able to get your spending key. So ideally, you'd actually start with two separate master keys so that they can't be derived, and you reduce your chance of being compromised. But that's kind of a little bit of a technical thing. We'll get to, once we get to deploying this, we'll post up some instructions and we'll make some guides around how to do it, but that's pretty much how it works.
We do have a couple of questions coming in.
Yeah, awesome.
The one from basically asking, all weight will be reset then, right? But I just covered that off, but it's already been answered in the channel. And then the other one is, when would we expect the cold staking reward expect cold staking and the static reward shall change to hit the voting stage?
Yeah,
so
cool.
maybe give it next place.
So, yeah, your weight, it was already answered, right? But we'll answer it in the video anyway. When you create this transaction, you will be resetting your weight, right? Because your coin weight in the current system is based on coin age. And this transaction will reset coin age, basically. So you'll want to stake all your coins till their coin age is low, and then send them off to your cold staking address, basically. What was the other question? What's the roadmap for this stuff?
Yeah, basically what's the roadmap?
So I've got an article I'm going to post to my Medium later today, actually, which sort of explains all of this. But effectively, the short story is we're looking to get the community fund and a few things around that tied up in the next few weeks. Probably about 4 weeks from this week, we're hoping to release the community fund claims proposal system. That is a soft fork, and it will take some time to settle on the network and to be voted on and all that kind of thing. So we don't want to have too many of these votes all happening at once. It kind of increases the deployment complexity. We have to make sure all these different combinations of things aren't going to screw anything up. So we effectively want to wait. We're going to obviously focus on community fund first, and once that's out the door, probably have about a 4-week period where we let that vote happen and that go live on the mainnet, and then we'll launch cold staking and static rewards as a POS v3 update in the next version of the wallet after that. So probably community fund in 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks after that, cold staking and static rewards, as long as, depending on the network being settled down and how testing goes, obviously. That's the kind of time frame, and then after that, we're all full steam working on our new privacy solution, basically. But I'll talk more about that kind of stuff in the post that I'm sending out today on Medium.
There was just one question: is why do we reward someone for not putting anything in cold staking? Well,
why do we reward someone for not using a cold staking address?
Yeah, basically. But
so the old style of address will still be valid to stake with. It's really up to the user. Like if you've only got a couple hundred NAV in your staking, you might not really care that much about the security or something like this. So it might just be easier for you to use a regular address.
Yeah, the user's discretion. Really.
But it's at the user's discretion. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I mean, one of our big ethoses here is that we try not to force people to do stuff. We try and provide people with options, and we give recommendations on best practices. But we try not to force people to jump through hoops unnecessarily. Potentially. I mean, there is some argument that this does take up slightly more space on the blockchain. It's a longer address. It's a few more kilobytes. It's not really a big deal. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't do it, to be honest. Yeah.
So I think that's all the questions so far that's come through.
Okay.
Awesome.
Is anything else you want to touch on?
No. Anyone else got any questions?
Staking pools? Said it now. One thing which this could facilitate is staking pools, because you don't need to, if you've got a small balance, it might be advantageous for you to let someone handle that remotely. It's not really something that's of a concern right now, and it doesn't even exist. There's no, as we mapped out before, all the transactions go from A back to A, so there's no way for a staking pool operator to necessarily take part of that transaction as payment. So probably not going to happen, but you do have to remember that even though this is a safe way to stake your coins, and your coins can't move, your coins now, especially with things like the community fund, are involved in voting. They're involved in consensus level voting of decisions on the network, and they're also involved in, will soon be involved in voting on proposals. So if you do decide to set up a staking pool or give your coins to someone else to stake on your behalf, just be aware that you are handing over your voting rights, and it could lead to centralization of voting on proposals and stuff like that. Not a big concern, and something we can always address if it does become a concern. But it's always good to raise some of the criticisms potentially, as well as the positive aspects, I think, to try and give a balanced overview. Yeah, don't see it as a problem, but if it does become one, we can address it.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Now we're just having discussions around hot transactions, but I think if you watch the first couple of videos, it really explains in how it all kind of fits together with the cold staking.
Yeah, so we'll try and edit these together potentially into a slightly more succinct video if we can, and put this online, and then we'll come back. We'll come back next week, and we're probably not going to do these every week, but because we were cut short, we'll try and schedule another one for next week, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the fixed rewards, and we'll get into a bit of the math behind how that works. Sound good? All right, let's do it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. So yeah, actually, we'll just sign off with that. Next week, we'll do the static rewards, and then the next major one that we're going to do, the topics that we want to cover, is going to be around the community fund and the proposal voting system. So that's going to be coming up. We haven't scheduled when, but hopefully sometime in the next few weeks before we launch the community fund. It'll be great to get you guys all across how that works as well. So these are our sort of major releases that we've got coming up, and we're just trying to really make sure all the information's out there in the public and everyone's well informed. So thanks for tuning in, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.